Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Thai Talk with Dan. Right, the story that I'm about to present on the channel is a little different. I had a read of it yesterday and thought, shall I share it or shan't I? And then I thought, hey, why not? We don't get many stories like this, and when I do normally get a story like this, it's particularly quite graphic. So this makes a refreshing change. However, it's different. This guy bats for the other side. And he's titled his email, A Thailand Love Story. So without further delay, let's get into today's Thailand story. Hey Dan, hope you are well and feeling better. Firstly, I would like to say a sincere thank you. You have helped me to avoid many years of heartbreak by posting your videos. I just want to let you know that your videos stopped me from making a very big and expensive mistake. Let me tell you that it's not just the Thai bar girls that play the game like pros, but the guys too. The story begins when I arrived in Phuket in February 2023. I was living in Australia and thought coming to Thailand to work remotely for 6 months would be a great idea. Beaches, jet skis, and some time to party. When I arrived in Phuket, I downloaded Tinder, and after talking with a very sweet guy, we decided to meet for a drink on Bangla Road. He was 23 and I am 29. We went to a nightclub until about 4 a.m. and then went our separate ways. I was expecting to pay for everything, but we each paid for our own drinks. I was quite surprised at this. We texted for a few days and he told me that he had a well-paying job, was helping support his family back in Isan, and was looking for a long-term relationship. So we would go to the nightclubs, beaches and restaurants, etc. Basically, from the first evening we met, he stayed at my apartment every night because he told me that it was just so difficult sleeping alone. But when he was with me, he was the happiest he'd ever been. Two weeks after we met, he asked me to be his boyfriend. He was so sweet, kind and caring that I genuinely thought I had just met the love of my life. I said yes, on the condition that we both agreed to delete our dating applications. There was something strange though, because I know he worked late into the evenings, but he would be out until after 2 a.m. most nights. I enjoy a good night out, but not 6 times per week. He said that he liked to party and drink with his friends, but I knew he didn't have many friends because he had told me that on the first date. Red flag number 1. I didn't mind though because I was working remotely and we had time during the day to spend with each other. So I told him, just do what makes you happy. And please don't wake me up when you get back to the apartment. Fast forward 3 weeks, and as he was scrolling through his phone while we were talking, I noticed that he still had Tinder on his phone. I told him that this required an explanation and that he needed to immediately show me the messages. He slid the phone across the table and began sobbing and crying with his head in his hands.
Oh my God!
As it turned out, he was working as a creature of the night. and the Tinder messages were all about negotiating prices for late night rendezvous at various hotels with his customers. Now it made sense why he would often return to the apartment after 2 a.m. I was so shocked. He proceeded to tell me all the reasons why he was working as a creature of the night and why he had lied to me. He said that his job didn't pay as much as he had told me and gave me the usual sob story about needing to send 10,000 baht back to his family every month to pay for his grandmother's medical bills, his sister's school fees, and food for the family, etc., etc. He cried for about an hour and begged me not to break up with him. He promised that he would never work as a creature of the night again and told me that he had never met anyone in his life that he loved as much as me. He said that he could only quit working as a creature of the night if I was able to pay him 10,000 baht per month to send back to his family. So, in a moment of empathy and compassion, I agreed to pay him the 10,000 baht per month so we could continue the relationship and he would be able to start a new chapter in his life. He was so happy and grateful and told me that I was the kindest, sweetest and most caring guy he had ever met. He told me that he loved me so much that he wanted me to travel to his village in Isan so I could meet his family and friends. At this point, we had known each other for 5 weeks and he was already on the monthly payroll. So of course, I paid for the flight to Isan. We arrived at the village and this is where the trouble really started. When we arrived in Isan, he told me that it was standard custom that as the Falang, I paid for a large celebration dinner with all of his cousins and family for our first night on arrival. It was about 2,000 baht, so I wasn't overly concerned. A few days later, he asked me for another 2,000 baht because they couldn't afford the materials that his sisters would need to start the new school year. Again, I obliged because his sisters were sweet and were very attentive to me while we were at the village. Then he told me that his grandmother worked in the rice fields and she was physically exhausted walking to and from work every day because she didn't have a motorbike. So of course, being a complete idiot, I paid the 5,000 baht deposit for her motorbike. As he said, the family couldn't afford the initial deposit, but only the monthly repayments. Does this story sound familiar, ladies and gentlemen? After 5 days at the village, he told me that he loved me more than anyone else in the world. He started crying that I would be leaving Thailand in about 4 months, which he worried would be the end of our relationship. I consoled him and in a moment of utter stupidity told him that I would be able to get him an Australian visa so we could be together. The only catch was that we would have to get married. Of course, he agreed to being offered an Australian visa in about 3 seconds. Why I suggested this, I have no idea, other than love is blind and that I was a complete fool. He said that we would need to ask permission from his grandmother for the engagement and eventual marriage in Australia. So on our last day in Isan, me, him and his grandmother made a plan to talk about our future. As we entered the house, he asked me, "How much can you pay for the sin sod?" I asked him, "What is sin sod?" I then Googled it and discovered, to my horror, that it was a dowry payment. Now, if you did a little bit more Googling, you would know that a man here in Thailand does not receive any form of a dowry payment. I was quite surprised by this because we had talked several times about needing to get married for the visa, and he never mentioned anything about a dowry payment until about 2 minutes before we were to talk with his grandmother. His grandmother then proceeded to tell me that I would need to pay 400,000 baht in cash and 70,000 baht worth of gold for the sin sod, and that it would also be fair to buy her grandson a gold engagement ring for about 20,000 baht.
Gotcha, bitch.
So I decided to do a currency conversion on my phone and realised that she was asking for 21,000 Australian dollars. This didn't include the $12,000 cost for the fiancé visa and immigration agent, the $500 monthly salary, nor the $10,000 for 1 year of English classes I had offered him so we could communicate better with each other. So the total cost for our first year in Australia, $49,000. So we arrived back in Phuket and everything continued as normal, except now my suspicions were beginning to grow. This is when I started Googling and discovered your channel. I paid another 60,000 baht so we would have a nice beachfront apartment to live in during my last 3 months in Thailand. And of course, now that I was his fiancé, every time we went out for dinner or drinks in Patong, I paid for everything. He always wanted to go to nice Western restaurants and the fancy beach clubs, which was costing me about another 30,000 baht per month in expenses. So I continued paying his monthly salary of 10,000 baht per month, and we agreed to put all of the conversations about sin sod to the side and just continue our relationship until our plans to move to Australia were further along. But I was starting to feel his emotions towards me weren't genuine. He wouldn't smile when he saw me. When we had dinner, he would barely speak. And when he came home from work, he would have dinner out on the balcony by himself. And then he would come inside and watch TikTok videos. I asked him on several occasions that maybe it would be lovely for us to talk in the evenings when he'd come home from work, but he always said that he was too tired. I still felt like the luckiest person in the world to have met one of the 2% of Thai people who wanted to marry a Falang for love, not just for the money and the visa. There was no way that all of your reader stories could be correct and I was being financially taken advantage of. Then one morning, while he was sleeping off a hangover, I looked through his phone. I discovered in his messages that he was still working as a creature of the night. I also found a bank statement in his emails that showed me he was depositing about 20,000 baht per month in cash into a secret savings account and had received wire transfers from other Falangs. At this point, I was really starting to have my doubts, so I continued watching all of the videos and stories from your channel. This Thailand love story was starting to sound remarkably familiar to all of the other letters you read out from your audience. But I thought that, no, I understand it happens to a lot of people, but there was no way this could be the case here. He was just doing what he needed to support his family, and everything would change when we moved to Australia. But then, he made the fatal mistake of overplaying his hand. He didn't usually want to talk much in the evenings, but on this occasion, he insisted we have a conversation. He told me about how much his family was still struggling and that they had high interest debts that urgently needed to be repaid, and that I would need to increase his monthly salary to 20,000 baht. He wasn't even polite about it either. He literally just said, "You need to pay me 20,000 baht every month." So I refused, because we had already agreed on our monthly arrangement. For the next 3 hours, we argued about his new request for 20,000 baht per month. I asked him several times that if I refused to pay him the money, would he break up with me? He delayed and deferred the question and refused to tell me a direct answer. Eventually, I told him, "You need to say either yes or no." And fortunately for me, he was stupid enough to say yes, that if I couldn't pay the new request for 20,000 baht per month, he would not be my fiancé anymore. I couldn't believe how dumb he really was, because he already knew that I had basically agreed to all of his family's requests that would be paid over time. I was paying for all of our living expenses, and that I was making the $3,000 down payment for the Australian fiancé visa within the next week. This is when I finally knew that I was an idiot and he was a hustler from Isan who played me for a fool. So I broke up with him, but he kept texting me every day, begging and pleading to get back together and telling me how much he loved me and that he's so sorry for asking for the 20,000 baht per month, but his family were in such financial distress, etc, etc, etc. Dan, I'm embarrassed to admit that I agreed that we go back to our 10,000 baht per month arrangement and still continue with our plan to move to Australia. But after watching about another 20 videos on your channel, I decided that I needed to do one final test to find out whether he really loved me or not, or was just happy being on the monthly payroll and looking for an Australian visa. So I said that I actually earned a lot less money than I had told him and couldn't afford his Australian visa. I told him that I would have to borrow the $12,000 from my parents, which we would pay back to them over the course of the year. I told him that he would have to find a job to work about 20 hours a week working at a restaurant or a factory because of his limited English skills in order for us to cover rent, joint monthly living expenses and the cost of the Australian visa. I told him that I was unsure how much money he would be able to send back to his family each month because all of our bills would need to be paid first. I said I was unable to afford the 400,000 baht dowry, that I could only afford 50,000 baht, and that I wouldn't be able to afford the engagement rings until we moved to Australia, and that the engagement rings would be silver rather than gold because of my difficult financial situation. Of course, all of this was untrue, but I knew his reaction would tell me everything I needed to know. The smile dropped from his face, and his eyes became laser beams that burned through my soul. Gizmo had finally turned into the gremlin that he always was. I was just too stupid and in love to know the truth. Over the next few weeks, the text messages from him became less frequent. He stopped sending love heart emojis and said that he was unsure about our future together if I was unable to financially support him in Australia. It seemed like he was waiting for a better offer from the next phalang he could meet on Tinder. I realised I had been a complete fool, so I stopped texting him, and he has never initiated another text message conversation since then. Keep up the great work on your channel, Dan. All the best, James. Well, James, all I can say is luckily enough, it was a lesson learned, a bit of heartbreak, but you didn't get financially ruined. I mean, if you would have ended up paying for all of that stuff, there would have been a lot more stuff around the corner. And I've heard a lot more crazy stories than this from guys that have been milked from Thai women that don't work in the bar over here. But these are stories I hear when I'm out and about and I'm speaking to foreigners that I meet. So I don't particularly share them on the channel. I mainly only share the stories that come through via email. Luckily, you got away before it got worse. And this guy and his granny definitely would have milked you dry. And not in the good sense either. And James, for me, it's nice to hear when guys are telling me that the stories that they've listened to and watched on YouTube have actually helped them out a lot. It's a great thing. I mean, it's one of the main reasons why I've kept these stories going, because if there's enough stories about with different scenarios and you can put yourself in the same scenario as one of these stories that you're watching, the penny can finally drop and you can go, hey up, I need to be a little bit careful here, because so many guys have been absolutely milked here and spent thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars. I mean, luckily it didn't cost you a fortune. You did quite well really that you woke up early enough before paying that huge dowry payment. And for your information, you don't pay a man a dowry here in Thailand. That was a complete and utter scam. It's unfortunate, but when you're poor in any country and you've got a tourist that's fallen in love with you, that's willing to spend money, doesn't understand the customs, etc. of your country and what really goes on, you're going to try and push your luck. Yeah, you know, you are going to try and push your luck, you know, if it's not about love for that person and it's all about the money. It's unfortunate, but it is the way it is. And I'm going to be creating a video, hopefully over the next few days, to try to explain better to some of you guys that don't understand about why some Thai women, or poor Thai women with little to no education from poor families, a poor background, feel like they've got no other alternative but to be with a foreign man for a better life. That is coming soon. So guys, if you've got your own Thailand related story and you wish to share it with everybody on the channel, then get your email sent in to thaitalkwithdan@gmail.com. Also, if you're living here in Thailand and you're based in or around Isan, then let me know if you're willing to do an interview on the channel and send me an email to thaitalkwithdan@gmail.com. Thanks for watching, guys. Take it easy, stay safe, and ciao for now. Bye-bye.